Today marks day 51 of the Biden infestation of the White House in Washington. Yesterday, on day 50, President-elect Joe finally decided to have his first live presidential address. I have to give him credit because he was able to get through the 24-minute speech without one good stutter or gaffe. He said that by May 1st, every American will be able to get in line to have their vaccination. But let me help you not waste nearly a half hour of your life that you won't be able to get back, because that's what the speech was about a half hour. This was a whole lot of nothing that really did nothing for me. I mean, we waited 50 days for a new president to come in and address the American people during a pandemic, during one of the most controversial presidential elections in the history of the United States. It took him 50 days to address the American people, and he was really nothing about nothing. It was one of the most underwhelming performances I've seen. But to his credit, Joe appeared to be very much on top of his game, even though just a couple days ago when he was having a press conference with someone, he couldn't even get, remember the people's names who were behind him. Now, I know I won't be any of the lines for the vaccination, but look how he says, "Let me be clear." That doesn't mean everyone will be able to get the shot immediately, but it means you may be able to get in line for the shot. Verbiage is very important when you're watching these Democratic politicians, because they like to say things that don't quite border on truths, but don't quite border on lies, because they sell something that we all want, right? What is the biggest thing you buy when you buy any product, when you buy any service, when you buy any thing for yourself? It's called hope. And the Democrats have been selling hope for years and years and years. I think President Obama's whole entire election montage, or his whole entire election mantra, was hope and change, right? It's not about realistic expectations. It's not about doing something real. It's about hope. That's a clear setup for failure of that promise. And a way to go back on it when you say, "Let me be clear, you may," no, I never said you will. I never said American people will. I said they may be able to. But let's check out Joe himself.
As of now, total deaths in America, 527,726. That's more deaths than in World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, and 9/11 combined. All adult Americans will be eligible to get a vaccine no later than May 1. That's much earlier than expected. Let me be clear. That doesn't mean everyone's going to have that shot immediately, but it means you'll be able to get in line beginning May 1. Every adult will be eligible to get their shot. And to do this, we're going to go from 1 million shots a day that I promised in December, before I was sworn in, to beating our current pace of 2 million shots a day. I promise I will do everything in my power. I will not relent until we beat this virus. But I need you, the American people. I need you. I need every American to do their part.
So you'll be eligible. So I'm not really understanding. I'm an American, right? So I should be eligible based on the fact that I'm an American. So what does that mean, that by May everyone will be eligible? Again, there's a lot of misspeak in Washington. It's what they do. It's what they say. It's how they say it and what we buy. And what they want us to hold on to, what we hear, is different than what they say. That way they can always go back and go, "No, that's not what we said. That's not what we said. You just heard it wrong," right? It's always somebody else. But that's our breaking news for this evening. We have Joe Biden giving his first speech since taking election. Thanks, Joe, for coming out and giving us 24 minutes of wasting my time. That's the reality. But before we get going into the real part of the show, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. We did try to go live yesterday. However, when I'm still in Texas. I'm actually at my middle daughter's house, Haley and Chris. They've been gracious enough to host me this evening and allow me to set up camp at their dinner table. I've been out here visiting my girls, spending some time with the kids. Had a funeral we had to go to on Wednesday. So I really appreciate your guys' efforts. We did try to go live. We actually worked until about 12:30 this morning, but we were in a place where service wasn't that great. That's one of the things that we do struggle with out here in Texas, is in the back country that we're in, is a little bit of service. So I do apologize that we weren't able to go live yesterday. However, I'm here with my pro-God, my pro-life, and my pro-gun shirt, because I am pro-God, pro-life, and pro-gun. And in case you don't know that, just read the shirt, right? I'm a pro a lot of things, but it has to deal with pro-God, pro-life, and pro-guns. I'm going to be at the top of my list. So here we are at the Clown World Network. We're hitting episode 21. We are making progress, moving forward, having a great time putting these shows together, but we do need you. So as always, we will ask you to like, share, follow, subscribe, and comment. We do appreciate your comments. We do continue to answer those comments and try to get back with everybody as we go through the day. So without further ado, we'll get right into the rest of the show, starting now. So as Joe mumbled through a prepared COVID speech yesterday in the White House, during his White House speech, I'm going to point out something. This is an image of whitehouse.com, like, or whitehouse.gov. This is an image right off of their website. It's live on the White House channel. Only 1,049 people watched his speech. 1,049. There it is. Look at that. 1,049 people watched his speech. Now, there's 1.89 million subscribers, and 1,000 were interested in what Joe had to say. For a man that received 81 million votes, right? 81 million votes. The most popularly elected president in the history of the United States, and he has a speech, and he only polls 1,049 people. I don't know what to think. I really don't. Maybe most of the nation lost its internet at exactly the same time and just couldn't log in, but those numbers certainly don't seem right. They do not reflect somebody who polled 81 million people who were hanging on Joe Biden for the hope of the future in America. Now, again, it may not be a dynamic, but let's use a little metric like this. In TikTok, there's TikTok famous people that get millions of hits within 5 minutes of going live. These are people who are genre specific, right? They're genre specific, age group specific. Joe Biden is the president of the people, supposedly by the people, and really for the people. 81 million votes, which means that there's at least 81 million people that thought he was a better president than Donald Trump, and got off their asses and went to the polls and voted sometimes 2 and 3 times just because they like Joe so much, right? Now that's borderline saying it's election fraud, but I'm just saying that they just liked him, so they voted more than once. But I'm telling you, how does a most popular president in the history of the electoral process in the United States only poll 1,049 viewers? Now let's compare that to Trump's views at the CPAC event just a couple weeks ago, which drew in more viewers than on the Golden Globes, which occurred at the same time, basically the same time on that same day. He polled more viewers, Trump did, than the Golden Globes. Now that's the former president who was supposedly not popular enough to be elected, who supposedly didn't have the pulse on the people, didn't have the 81 million votes to beat Joe Biden. He had more people watching a CPAC speech than Joe Biden did on a public forum. Now, typically, Donald Trump would poll 1.5 million to 1.75 million viewers on whitehouse.gov. So to only poll 1,049, that's saying a lot. I mean, that's just really just saying a lot. So you understand that Trump, and again, put this in perspective. He was at a conservative gathering, which automatically limits his audience right there, that had millions of viewers in a speech that was removed and censored with just days of it occurring, because the internet censors Donald Trump. Twitter, Facebook, they all took it down. YouTube all took it down. They took down from credible media sources like Fox And then the not so credible ones, which the media loves anyway, which the social loves anyway, which is like CNN and a couple of the MSNBCs, they all got the speech taken down. But he pulled more viewers than the sitting president, the most popular president in the entire history. You know, his entire viewer base for that afternoon would have been able to fit in the White House, the Oval Office. 1,049. They could have had like a watch party at the White House on the front lawn, and it wouldn't have even cost them that much. Come the F on. Who's lying to who? I mean, who's really stringing us along and making us like, you know? Oh, man. It looks like Lauren's got us out of order, so we're going to go in here a little bit. I'm going to change this up a little bit, Lauren. Jen Psaki, she's been in the news for us. She goes, we featured Jen Psaki as our clown of the day last week for her circle back statements. We even had a little rap, the circle back rap. I'm going to circle back, right? But she continues to leave me in awe at the ineptness of her ability to conduct herself. Now, I keep trying to, bring this to light, but the Biden White House, the press secretary, has requested that questions be issued to them prior to the press conference so that she doesn't get caught off guard because of the embarrassment that she's been. But Jen Psaki, in this latest little gaffe, thinks it's funny that there are no COVID restrictions for illegal alien children while U.S. schools remain closed. Check out this video clip.
Since they are not all back, from an administration position or from your perspective, have the Border Patrol unions and the HHS unions been easier to work with than the teachers' unions?
I think that's a little bit of mixing different circumstances. I would say that
it's children all in tight quarters. I mean, a classroom.
Not quite.
Not funny.
Not quite. I would say that let's take a responsible approach to the two issues. Okay, one is schools reopening. There's been 8 mitigation steps that have been announced by the CDC to implement. Right.
Well, trying to spin this, Jen says, that's a little bit mixing different circumstances. So a Fox News journalist asked her, have the Border Patrol unions and the AHS unions been easier to work with than the teachers' unions? Her response was a typical political spin that press conferences, press secretaries have to do. She said, that's a little bit of a mixing different circumstances. But the reporter fires back immediately by asking, are children all in tight quarters? Well, Jen isn't sure what direction to go with this, and it's obvious that she was caught completely off guard. And is visibly, like you can see, she's visibly shaken. Like people have their body language. And she cocks her head to the side and says, not quite, and then laughs. Let me show you that again. She laughs. Watch her face. Watch her body language.
Since they are not.
The two issues, okay? One is schools reopening. There's been 8 mitigation steps that have been announced by the CDC to implement, right?
Let's back that up just a little bit. We lost sound there for a minute. It's really important.
They are not all back, from an administration position or from your perspective, have the Border Patrol unions and the HHS unions been easier to work with than the teachers' unions?
Watch this.
I think that's a little bit of mixing different circumstances. I would say that
it's children all in tight quarters. I mean, a classroom.
Okay, that
not
right
quite. Not quite. I would say
that right there goes to show you, like, she really wasn't sure how to deal with it. Now, this is what we've been saying all along. Kayleigh McEnany, the Trump press secretary, was phenomenal under pressure because she was under pressure every single time that she walked out on that stage. And she was never visibly shaken. In fact, she put the press back on their heels more times than not. Jen Psaki continues to allow herself to be like, she's not really a press secretary. She's someone who answers preloaded questions. So when someone actually asks her a question that she doesn't have an answer to, she doesn't know how to respond because she doesn't do her freaking homework. The Fox reporter immediately caught her when she laughed and says, it's not funny. I mean, finally, we have a reporter that's actually going after her for her ineptitude as a press secretary, for going after her for not being as forthright and transparent as they said they were going to be, and for really sucking at her job. You know, Joe Biden actually bragged about the education his administration is providing to illegal children on the border. He's actually bragged about this while millions of American kids have not returned to in-person learning. So here we have our sitting president bragging about how great the education is for illegals because they don't care about the American people. But let you decide. I don't know where Lauren went. I think he disappeared on me. Oh, well, we'll just continue to move on. Lauren, did you disappear on me, buddy? Well, at least Jen didn't circle back this time, but she tried really hard to give an intelligent answer, I suppose. She still failed. Maybe this is why circling back is such a big practice of hers, because it protects herself from looking stupid. But in a recent Gallup poll, and, you know, Gallup does a lot of this stuff, nearly 8 in 10 parents favor in-person learning. That's 79% of K through 12 parents to be exact. 8 in 10 parents favor in-person learning. So I was hoping to have that video of Joe Biden bragging about his education, but 8 in 10 are still sitting at home. So here's another shocking number. 94% of parents who are Republicans favor in-person learning, while 6% do not. Only 6% of Republican parents do not favor in-person learning. And 62% of parents who are Democrats support in-person schooling compared to 38% who do not. So you're talking about a 2/3 minimum majority within the Democratic Party that believe that kids should be back in school. Now, how big of an influence do you think the mainstream media has on people? How big of an influence do you think these government mandates are having on people when you have a majority of parents, both Democrat and Republican, that favor in-person learning, that favor their kids getting back to school? It's completely asinine. I have to apologize for the pause. There's a major delay in our call back to the studio. So when I'm watching, I know that the studio is behind, and I'm not sure exactly where we're at, which I think is why Lauren and I are getting a little bit disconnected. So former ambassador and current coordinator for the southwestern border and on the National Security Council, Roberta Jacobson, took questions from reporters on the crisis of the border yesterday. Ambassador Jacobson got the memo and refused to say there was a crisis, at the southern border thanks to Joe Biden's open border policies. Now, Joe's reversal of Trump's Remain in Mexico program, the idea was they would remain in Mexico while they were going through the process here to get processed, promised release, and allowed unaccompanied migrant children into the U.S., which caused a huge surge of illegal border crossings in the last week, the majority of which have been done by young minor children. Now, parents are dropping their kids off, getting them across the border. The idea is the kids will come here and then they'll send for the families, right? That's the brainchild of the border. But the Department of Homeland Security refuses to confirm a number of unaccompanied minors detained at the Border Patrol right now. You know, cages, you know, things like that. So
Madam Ambassador, do you think it's a coincidence that as soon as Trump and his immigration policy were on the way out and Biden and his stated policy were on the way in, this historic surge at the border started?
Well,
First of all, one of the things I think is important is we've seen surges before. Surges tend to respond to hope. And there was a significant hope for a more humane policy after 4 years of, pent-up demand. So I don't know whether I would call that a coincidence, but I certainly think that the idea that a more humane policy would be in place may have driven people to make that decision.
So there it is again, the word hope. She's blaming the border crisis on the hope of new policy change. She's blaming the border crisis on the fact that we have a change in policy going from Trump to Biden. So all but admitting that Joe's policies are causing this massive surge. It basically admitted that Trump's hard policies actually, because it didn't give people that hope to come sacrifice and risk it all at the border because they realized they were going to be detained. Now, you understand what I'm saying, right? They're saying, yeah, there's typically surges when a policy changes. Well, the policy changed, and it didn't just change, it opened up the doors for people just to come to this country illegally, being promised that they were going to get citizenship or be allowed to stay in the country. So Biden's administration's refusal to admit it and deal with it by enforcing federal immigration laws is only making the situation worse. And she just said that. She just went on the record as saying that because we're not refusing and we're not enforcing those, it gives people hope, and that's why they're surging at the border. Now, you can take it for what you want, but it's only making the situation worse. They could think they can walk their way around this and they can continue to pull the wool over the eyes of American people, but the full hospitals in Texas, the full hospitals at the border in Texas, the full of COVID patients coming in through Texas, the full COVID wards down in Tucson are an example of what's going on. And here we have this person in the Biden administration saying, well, because Joe's policies are giving people hope, yeah, they're going to surge, and that's what happens. Trying to downplay the fact that the whole idea why they're surging is because Joe opened up the goddamn border, right? It's just crazy to me. I just don't know. I don't even know what to think. But every time we try to open our mouths and talk about it, we're basically, especially as conservatives, we're being censored. So a lot of us have taken to media platforms, outside media platforms other than Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube, to find a voice and to be able to be heard and be able to find information that is directly related to our political standpoint or political views, and to try and find real news that isn't being controlled by the liberal media. So in 2016, Andrew Torba founded Gab. It has served as a great kind of free speech platform for people who still respect that they can voice opinions without being shut down. That may be opinions of one party or another. It doesn't mean that they're just conservatives. It just means that if you have a view, that you can voice it without fear of retribution or fear of being censored. So recently, private Gab messages from Torba were made available last week by a whistleblower, like a whistleblowing website, after a massive hack of the platform. There was a huge hack of the platform. The hackers went after it. They're trying to find dirt on Torba, but they show him directly welcoming conservative figures to the site and working to showcase their content. Now, that's not unheard of, right? I mean, doesn't Facebook and Twitter, don't they work to directly welcome Democratic content, liberal content, while stifling conservative voices? So why is it such a big thing that a conservative-leaning site or a conservative-leaning owner, or somebody who developed this conservative-leaning, would have conservative views and be welcoming to people who are being censored on other platforms? But yet again, it's okay to be censored on one platform by somebody who doesn't welcome freedom of speech and freedom of views, while another platform tries to build that freedom and is under the gun for being that site for that freedom. So the private messages that were obtained by the hacker includes data of a conversation which Torba welcomed, and this is Darush Valiza. is so-called anti-Semite. He's supposedly an anti-Semite, conservative anti-Semite. But well, the entire issue here stemmed from this very simple message between the two. There was a very simple message where Torba said, Darush said, "Thank you for the warm welcome on Gab. I enjoy not having to self-censor like on Twitter." "You're welcome, brother. Pay for us. We need it," Torba responded. That's a pretty simple exchange. Hey, thank you for having us on the site. Thank you for allowing me to have my opinions and my voice without having to self-censor. And Torba goes, "You're welcome. Pray for us. We need it." This is a time when conservative voices are being stifled. So Torba put together a site in 2016 that allowed us to have a voice that was going to be free of censorship. He's doing what any good business owner would do: welcome somebody to your platform. So in response, in infinite wisdom, now I had a hard time with this one because I'm in Texas. I love Texas. I think Texas has done a lot of things right. But Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, goes on social media. He calls on social media platform Gab. He calls them anti-Semitic because of this exchange, a very simple, innocent exchange. There was nothing that was anti-Semitic in that exchange. But because Darush may have had some views previously in his past, now we're cancel culture. This is what I've talked about. This is the problem with the GOPs, is that they don't know how to toe a line. They're taking something so minute and trying to build it into something so that they don't look like they're contributing to anything. Well, here's the funny part. So Governor Abbott said that it has no place in Texas, while being joined with Reps King and Goldman, who think they are fighting anti-Semitism in Texas by attacking Gab publicly and calling it anti-Semitic. I think they are just too busy with other things. They need to find something to do. I mean, this is like really, they need a hobby. But check out this video, Abbott with the King and Goldman.
Anti-Semitic platforms like Gab have no place in Texas and certainly do not represent Texas values. What does represent Texas values is legislation like this by Representative King and Representative Goldman that fights anti-Semitism in Texas.
So the legislation Abbott's even talking about is dealing with the Texas Holocaust and Genocide Advisory Committee. It doesn't mention anything about Gab or anti-Semitism. Gab defended itself by directly responding to Abbott's tweet and explaining how it supports the political speech of all Americans. Lauren, do we have that? You can scroll that that legislation. I mean, stop it right there. Back it up just a little bit, please. Right there. Texas Holocaust and Advisory Committee. At no point does it talk about Gab. Does it talk about being, fighting anti-Semitism? This is just a way for politicians to grandstand and gain viewership or gain whatever. But Gab defended itself and did exactly what it's supposed to do. It supports the political speech of all Americans. Gab is not an anti-Semitic platform. The social media company has replied, "We protect the political speech of all Americans regardless of viewpoint." Regardless of viewpoint. Because in this age of cancel culture, nobody else will. The whole reason why Gab became popular, Twitter put it in business. Facebook put it in business, just like it's put in Parler and Rumble and all these things, because these platforms are mitigating or minimizing the ability of people to have a free and a heard voice. We are being stifled. We are being canceled. We are being told that we can't hear things. A sitting president of the United States is basically banned. He has a speech post his presidency that was very, very, very well put together, well thought out, at a CPAC speech talking about the future of the Republican Party and conservatives in general, and they delete it. Why do you think places like Gab? So Gab says, "We protect the political speech of all Americans regardless of viewpoint, because in this age of cancel culture, nobody else will." So Greg Abbott and Representatives King and Goldman come on to push another bill which has a legislation that has nothing to do with that and use Gab as like we're going to fight anti-Semitism from platforms like that. But there's only one thing that the Governor Abbott and the Texas GOP should remember through all this, is that they also have Gab accounts, and they've used Gab accounts to reach their base. Do we have that image, Lauren? We should all send them a private message through Gab and let them know that the Texas GOP is been on Gab, has 17,500 followers. You know, they're following two people. It's the official Gab account for the Republican Party of Texas, but yet the governor of Texas, who's Republican, and Representatives King and Goldman are Republican. They are speaking out against Gab when they've been using it to reach their base, because they have to find new ways to reach their base because of this cancel culture BS that's going on. So I guess they better check their privilege. You know, here we are again. This really sucks. Gab has done a really good job, and they're trying not to be the enforcers. They're not enforcing. That goes right back to what Twitter, Facebook, and all of them are doing. They're enforcing these unreal regulations to the point where their fact checkers can be biased. Well, Greg, as much as I hate it, and as much as I know I'm going to take some flack for this, buddy, you've earned our coveted episode 21 Clown of the Day. But I'm going to actually come back to Texas now because I love Texas. So, Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a lawsuit over the city of Austin's mask mandate. So this is good. So Ken Paxton's the Attorney General in Texas. They have basically they've allowed the lifting of the mask mandates. I can tell you, being in Texas for the last 3 days, this has been a pleasure to walk into bars, to walk into restaurants, to walk into stores, and have a 98% ability to see people's faces, emotions, their eyes, just to engage, and people are making eye contact and they're smiling at each other. It's so weird because you can tell that people are trying to get back to a norm. So Texas AG Ken Paxton actually sued the city of Austin over the fact that they're going against the fact that the order has been lifted. Now, it's unfortunate because a liberal judge, Laura Livingston, has sided with the city of Austin, in this lawsuit. Basically, Laura Livingston on Friday declined to grant the state a temporary injunction against Austin. The ruling keeps the mandate in place for 2 more weeks, and another hearing is set for March 26th. Austin is a very liberal city. It's a very weird dynamic here in Texas. There's many areas that are very strong conservative areas. Then there are many areas that are like very liberal. But Texas has been leading the way in really trying to open up and really get back to business as usual. So the fact that they opened up and immediately saw that, hey, Austin's going to continue to go against opening up everything and filed a suit is pretty awesome. I wish more would do that. Austin Mayor Steve Adler praised the ruling on Twitter. Of course he did. And he got to go to Twitter to do it because he's a liberal and his speech is protected. So think about that one. Saying, good news. We learned this morning that Austin's mask rules will remain in effect for the next 2 weeks. Travis County Judge Andy Brown also shared the ruling on Twitter. After today's court hearing, the requirement to wear masks in Travis County and Austin businesses remains in effect. Thank you to our county attorney, Delia Garcia, and team for fighting to keep our community safe. Oh my, more bullshit. So, I don't know. The Attorney General threatened Adler with a lawsuit on Wednesday if the mask mandate wasn't removed, hours after saying his office was looking into every avenue available to stop the mandate. This is ridiculous. Texas Governor Abbott announced on March 2nd that he was lifting the statewide mandate, and his order took effect on Wednesday, right? That was March 10th. The order restricted the power to impose restrictions to county judges only if cases in their jurisdiction rise for 1 straight week. So here's Governor Abbott, who I just made my clown of the day, and it's unfortunate because he's really doing the best, I think one of the best in all the states in the union to actually get back to business as normal. and to put Texans back on the pathway of recovery economically and, through basically social interaction. And then I get to talk about the fact that his AG immediately filed a lawsuit against Austin, but Austin has got a stay of this mandate. We're going to continue to follow this because Texas is putting down some groundbreaking moves, and we have to keep an eye on this because there will be some other states that do try to follow Texas, and now we're going to be able to see how this is going to get handled when you have dissension between a liberal city and let's use it anything, one political affiliation city against a different political affiliation governor. Now that can work in the converse as well. You could have the city say, hey, we're not going to honor that mandate, and the governor say, yeah, we are, and it could be reversed. That's what this is all going to be about, is groundbreaking. So keep your eyes peeled, keep your eyes open. Texas, continue to do a good thing. I'm sorry Greg Abbott flipped on Gab. That really sucks. I really hope that the Republicans can figure out how to become unified, and we can get together on all of these things to get this stuff out there. We really need to get the country open back up. And I will tell you, the pleasure that I've had the last 3 days, being able to shop, being able to eat, being able to go to full restaurants and not have, this massive distance and wear a mask so I can walk from the front door 20 feet to a table. The ignorance of these mask mandates and some of the social distancing BS has really kind of worn down the American people. It's a pleasure to be in a place where we don't have to deal with that. I'm outside of Fort Worth in a little town called Weatherford, and it is nice as soon as I got off the plane to see people's smiling faces. I can't wait until we're able to freely see people for who they are again. And I will tell you, we are losing our humanity with these masks. They are causing us to be self-isolated. If you watch people, I'm a people watcher. Watch people when you're walking around that are wearing the mask. They're not looking around. They're looking down. They're not making eye contact. I don't know what it is about doing this, but it makes it hard to hear. Sometimes we are able to pick up conversation that we can't hear by the fact that we know how somebody's mouth moves. Not all of us read lips, I'm sure, but we learn how words are enunciated, and we learn how emotion is behind things. How do we know what emotion is behind somebody that's hiding behind a mask? How do we know what somebody is feeling, their facial expressions? How do we know if they're frowning or if they're smiling or if they're meaning something of an intention that they don't mean to mean? This is what I have with the problem with these masks, is that we have lost that part of our humanity. And places like Texas are trying to get it back for us. So I really hope that we can see more of this, and I really hope we see more of it in Arizona. I really think that, obviously here's California doubling down on it as North Dakota, Oklahoma, and Texas are trying to reopen. So on that note, remember to go out of your way to really bring somebody in, really involve yourself with other people, watch their eyes, try to watch their body language. There's a lot of people out there that are struggling, and I want to be us to be people who actually help people instead of put our faces down in our phones or look away from people. We need to be the people who are scanning the environment, looking for anybody we can bring something to. On that note, I really appreciate you watching us this evening. It's really an honor to be here every night. Remember to be good to each other, know that I love you, and honestly, we will talk to you again real soon. And remember, it's a clown world out there. I love you. Have a great evening.